Hi, Doug Andrew again. In this episode, you're going to learn how to answer the question or explain what does it mean to lock in your gains and reset. This is going to be powerful, and I have two different metaphors. I prefer one over the other, but you're going to see how when people get the myth conception that, oh, if the market goes up 50%, down 50, up 50, down 50, they think that's flat, that's a 0% return. No, it isn't. And this is the power of using indexing and locking in your gains every single year, or whatever the indexing period you chose, which could be a 2-year or 5-year, as you're going to learn. But you lock in the gains and you reset so you don't lose in the future the money you made in the past. You lock in those gains. A lot of savvy financial advisors do not understand this, so pay close attention. You'll have an advantage over them. And I'm going to give you a 10-year example. We'll review what Warren Buffett's rules of investing are, and we'll refer to page 105, I believe, of the book, The Laser Fund, because one of the slides that I'm going to show you is found here on page 105 of The Laser Fund, the left brain side, okay? And then I'm going to wrap it up by showing you exactly what happened in the year 2017 when many of our clients locked in gains of 16% and 25% on their indexed universal life. It was incredible. And I want you to sort of sink that into long-term memory, because when we talk about how to access money and the arbitrage, how phenomenal it was in 2017, where they were using their money out of their universal life policy and still making 20% rates of return on the money in their policy while they were using it for their business. And a lot of people don't understand this. It's like bank on yourself on steroids. So let's start out with the basic concepts here. I've mentioned in previous episodes that Warren Buffett's 2 rules of investing. Rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget rule number 1. Now, easier said than done, but this is the essence of indexed universal life, to not lose money. So how do we do that? A lot of people do not understand this concept. A 25% loss has to be followed by a 33% gain to get back to break even. People go, huh? I'll give you an actual example. Do you know in 2007 and 8, when people lost 40%, it was about 2.5, 3 years later on NBC, the Today Show. And I know these people. They had, I think, like Susie Orman and David Bach on, and I don't know who the other one was. And they were all saying, well, the market dropped 40% in 2008, but it's back up 40%. So everything's hunky-dory. And I'm going, what? These are professional advisors? Because most Americans were going, well, how come I'm not back to break even? Because logic would think, I lost 40. I gained 40, I should be back to break even. No. If you lose 40%, you have to have a 67% gain to make up for a 40% loss. So here's how you need to understand this. If you had $100,000 and you lost 25%, you're down to what? 75,000. 75,000 has to have a 33% gain. What's a third of 75? 25. It has to have a 33% increase to make up for a 25% loss. 25 grand is 33% of 75. If you lose 33%, if your 100,000 goes down to 67,000, 67,000 has to have a 50%. What's 50% of 67,000? Okay, it's 33,000. You have to have a 50% gain to make up for a 33% loss. A lot of people lost 50%. 50%, 100,000 goes down to 50 grand. You have to have a 100% gain to make up for a 50% loss. Now, later on, you're going to learn that this is important to understand when it comes to losses can not only happen because of market volatility, but because of taxes and inflation. This is huge. So, knowing this, we want to eliminate the losses in the first place rather than have to wait 4 or 5 years to make back a year where we lost 40%, because that's exactly what happened twice. from the period 2000 to 2012. I'm going to keep using that as an example because it's the worst 12-year period since the Great Depression. People lost 40% twice. The first time was 2001 to 2003. It took 4 years till 2007 to make it back. In 2008, they lost 40% again. It took 4 years until 2012 to get back to break even at $1 million. Our clients, the $1 million they started with was worth $3 million because they used indexing. Okay. So here's the myth. If the market goes up 50, down 50, up 50, down 50%, they will add those up. Wall Street adds that up and says, oh, it's been flat. It's zero. No, it isn't. If you started out with 100 grand, you don't have 100 grand after up 50, down 50, up 50, down 50. And people go, really? Watch. If you had 100,000 and you have a 50% gain, you're up to 150,000. Now, if the market loses 50%, you lose 50% of 150. You're down to 75,000. You're down 25 grand from your original principal of 100. Now, if the market rebounds 50%, you get 50% on 75,000, not your original 100. You only are up to 112.5. And then if the market drops 50%, you're not down to zero. You're down to $56,000. You had nearly a 44% loss on your original 100 grand. But Wall Street gets away with saying, oh, it's just been flat. It's just been zero. I think it's pretty horrible they get away with saying that to investors. So this is why I use this slide. You've seen it in the previous episode. This is on page 105 of the Laser Fund, so study it. And this is where I use a conservative example like I did in the last episode. The market goes up 10, down 10, up 10, down 10. You're not break even. You're down $5,000 on that 100,000 because when the market drops 10%, you lose 10% of that number, not your original 100. Whereas indexing, if you had 10 years, 5 of which the market went up 10% and 5 it went down 10, you won't make anything 5 of those years, but you don't lose. The other 5, you make money, but you lock in those gains every single year. And remember, you end up with 161,000. They tell you, oh, the average is 10%. No, 161 versus you lost 5%. You only had 95,000 here. You have 69% more money in this scenario than this one, and this is the indexing simplified. Well, let's talk about lock-in and reset in a little bit more detail. I like to ask people, which series would you prefer? These are 10-year graphs. Here is series 1, a taxable investment in the stock market, okay? And you start out with 100,000 and you go up, 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 up. Then you go down, 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 and then up, up, up. Now, by the way, you could have said this is from 1997 until 2007. You could have said, well, this is from 2003 until 2012, because that's exactly what happened. The market went up, and then we went down, and then it went up again. But what if when the market went up, maybe it didn't go up quite as steep, quite as fast. You didn't make quite as much money. But when the market went down, you didn't lose. You just maybe said, oh, pay me 1%, pay me 2%. Then the market turns around and it goes up again. You locked in this gain. You reset and you just sort of coasted, but you didn't lose. And then you pick up again. You don't need to have as much of a return. You can have it capped. And what's the difference? Here, you went down to 152. Here, you kept your 189,000. Here, it came back to 238. This one was worth 269. And I'm ending here at a high point. What would you prefer? This heartburn and 238 and have to pay tax? Or would you prefer to come up here and not lose and have 269 tax-free and no heartburn? I think I know your answer. Most people prefer this one. So, how does lock-in and reset work? When we simplify this, let's say we have 100,000 and the market goes up 10%, so you have 110, okay? Now, That's after 1 year. So you made 10%. And then that's the end of the linking period. Most of the time, people will choose annual point to point, 1 year point to point. So let's just assume that. So after that year with the lock-in and reset, this 110,000, this 10,000 becomes newly protected principal. You're locking in that $10,000 gain. So if the market lost 10% the next year, you don't lose. You locked in the gain. Everybody else who had their money in the market loses 10. They're down to 99,000. They're below their original principal. And then the next year, the market rebounds 10%. Okay. Let's say this person, many clients of mine have had a 1% floor. Okay. So 1% means they made a little bit of money here, but they didn't lose. Sometimes this is zero. It's flat. But let's say the market rebounds 5%. This one's up to 103,950. You rebound 5% here. You're making 5% from this balance, this point, not this point. So this one is up to 116,000. This one's only worth 103,000. And this is simply a 3-year example. This is lock in and reset simplified. This is the power behind locking in your gains and resetting every year. So how do I explain this to a client that's trying to wrap their brain around this? I compare it to a ratchet wrench. So if you've ever used a ratchet wrench, you know that you tighten the bolt or the nut and you tighten it, but then you reset and you click, 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 and you're not undoing the progress you made. A regular wrench, if you did that, and you didn't take it off the bolt, you're undoing what you progressed. You're retrogressing. That's money in the market. With a ratchet wrench, you go tighten, progress, and then reset. You don't advance, but you don't retrogress. Click, 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 you reset. It's like a ratchet wrench. You only go up and you reset. Now, this metaphor, I don't use as much because I'm not a gambler and sometimes people can't relate. But to some people that I know, maybe they visit Las Vegas a lot, I say, okay, you know, I'm not a gambler. I haven't put a nickel in a slot machine in 40 years. It's probably dollars now. But if I went to the Bellagio Hotel, where I've spoken many, many times, and they said, Mr. Andrew, you know, you've got a lot of credits and points here. As an honored guest, we have a portion over here in our casino. And as an honored guest, you can play in this casino all day long. And we guarantee this, that if you make money, you can walk out of here with all the money you made up to a cap of 15%. Now, you can't make more than 15% every time you are in this casino. And the trade-off is, if you lose any money, we guarantee you will walk out of this casino with what you walked in with. Is that gambling? No, not in my book. In other words, people say, well, what casino would do that? That's indexing. You do not lose money. You walk out what you walked in with. You keep what you started, that you preserve your principal. But if the market goes up, you get to keep your profits up to a cap. And the trade-off is, if the market goes down, if you lose due to market volatility, you won't lose because your money was not at risk in the market. So that's another metaphor. What I want to do is connect the dots here for you and show you that in this simple little example here, that was a 12.2% difference or rate of return. What does that equate to? Folks, in February of 1999, before the worst decade since the Great Depression, the market went up, and then 9/11 happened. And so this is the S&P, and it went down, 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 then up, 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 up. Then 2007, 2008, bam, 40%. And then it came back here. This is 2009. It barely was back to here. How did indexing do during that horrible period? This is what it looked like. I just superimposed that last slide down here. This is where your money would have lost. See, down 5%. It came up 5 and 6 and 9, but it went down, 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 44% here. Watch. 0, 0, 0, 15, 5, 6, 9.85, 0, 0, 15. I had 178,000 instead of only having 68,000 at the end of the same period. What would you prefer, 178 tax-free or 68,000 in your IRA or 401k that's still subject to tax? Folks, this is why I like indexing. This is where 0 is your hero 5 of the 10 years. Now, I want you to stay with me. Future episodes are going to show that I never earned 0 5 years. I only earned 0 that year and that year. Because I don't have to sit there and earn 0. I can switch back and earn the general account portfolio rate of 5%. So I only earned 0 this year and this year. This year, this year, and this year. The other 3 years, I earned 5%. And then I linked and put over here, that's called rebalancing. This is an advanced topic and strategy you need to learn. And this is where my rate of return went from an average of 8%, 7.2 in the worst decade, up to over 10.07% by rebalancing. That's the power behind this indexing. So traditional financial planning, you either have to choose guarantees with very little upside, or you want upside with no guarantees. The reason why I like a max-funded tax-advantaged insurance contract is because you get guarantees with an upside potential and you do not lose when it goes down. So let's go to a good year. I've shown you the worst decade. 2017 was a great year. Many of our clients locked in gains of 16%. On $1 million, they made $160,000 that year. Some, the cap was 25%. They made $250,000. On $1 million, they made $250,000 tax-free. Now, the next year was sort of a ho-hum year, 2018. What if 2018 was like 2008, 10 years earlier, and the market dropped 40%. See, most people with their money in the market, they would have lost all the money and a whole bunch more that they made the previous year and other years. With lock-in and reset, you would have locked in your gain of 16% or 25%. $1 million, you made $250,000. You now have $1,250,000. And if 2018, the market dropped 40%, you still have your $1,250,000. You may not make any money, but you didn't lose 40% of $1,250,000. And it takes you 4 years to make it back. You hit the ground running again because you reset. Are you getting it? This is magical. When you learn how to explain this and use a metaphor like the ratchet wrench, it will help people get it and they will understand why this is so important to protect their money. Safety of principle.